Dylan Larkin has requested a trade, and he just sent in his three-team preferred list in which, where he would like to go. And I don't, it just, it didn't win him any favors over there in Detroit from Red Wings fans. They're definitely not happy with that list. And before we get into the three teams that were requested, appreciate if you drop a like, comment, and subscribe. Helps out the channel immensely. But he preferred to be traded to the Vegas Golden Knights, the Minnesota Wild, and the Florida Panthers. Now, one of the main reasons why I'm going to start with his stats is there were some comments and a lot of videos I've seen about this trade that were just inherently incorrect. Dylan Larkin last year, 74 games played, 34 goals, 33 assists for 67 points. And while you can question his leadership, if you look throughout the past few years, this guy has been, an upper 60s, 70-point scorer. That is something any team would love to add. Is he a generational dominant number one center? No, but he definitely is an effective center. He wins more than 50% of his draws. And another thing I just want to mention, there was somebody that was going around saying that he doesn't score even strength goals, which is just not the case. Out of the 33 he scored last year, clearly shown here on Hockey Reference, 19 of them were on 5-on-5. Listen, I think that Dylan Larkin would be a very good ad to get for any team, but let's kind of go into the particular teams that he requested to go to. So the Vegas Golden Knights here, projected cap space would be $4.625 million. They're currently in the Stanley Cup final, and they're doing their absolute thing. They're doing great. But, really looking at this lineup, would they be able to fit Larkin underneath the cap? I mean, Vegas has managed to constantly rebuild, and they would move big pieces if needed. But, for example, Dylan Larkin up against the cap, it's over $8 million. You would have to make some room. And they have Dorofeev, who is an extremely good young player. He's a restricted free agent. I feel like that would be more of a priority. I mean, you're looking at this list. Maybe there's a older player you could trade out if you're Vegas to make this happen. But looking at the Vegas Golden Knights, do I really think it's a fit for them to go out there and get a guy like Larkin? Well, yes, that'd be extremely good. Depth scoring. He would be a great center to bring into the lineup. Is he really a need? I wouldn't say that. I mean, William Karlsson, he gives you what he gives you. Jack Eichel, when he's healthy, I mean, he had a great year this year, 90-point season. The 1-4 for Vegas, I think, is solid. Would Larkin be an improvement? Yeah, I think he could give you a little bit more there offensively, but with how good this team is constructed, do I see them bending over and making a crazy trade? No, and they would have to move some pretty decent pieces to even kind of open up that cap space. Whereas you got a young player that you really need to retain. I think that would be the priority. Or maybe if you make a trade, that's the player you have to move to make happen. Larkin, while not old by any stretch of the imagination, will be turning 30. So how many years left does he have in his prime? And with a Vegas Golden Knights team that is known to go all in, would I be shocked if they acquired him? Not really. Unless they're able to kind of throw like a William Karlsson back and kind of manipulate some of the cap. I just don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze there, where you're essentially up against the cap for the foreseeable future. We'll go into the next team with the Minnesota Wild. $12.75 million available in cap space. And this would be a great thing for this market to get. The Wild have been a team that has, been on the precipice of maybe getting to that next level. Could a player like Larkin do that for them? Absolutely. I mean, you have Tarasenko getting off the books, Foligno, Johansson, Karen, Fabry, Brink. I think Fabry, I believe he signed up over in Europe. I don't remember. But Zuccarello, that's a player they would love to see if they could retain, even though he's older. He's still productive. But looking at the lineup as constructed, Sturm, some players that can play center and wing. So maybe that's something they could do. Do I think a player like Larkin makes Minnesota a better hockey team? Sure. But what is Minnesota willing to give up? What would be the trade requirement? That's the big question here. I'm not as familiar with the Minnesota pipeline. I don't really see them dealing Eriksson Ek. I think that's a player they would just probably retain. Kind of been there for a while. He's really good player, heart and soul type guy. Hartman. Do I see a Larkin adding value here? Absolutely. But to be frank, the Wild have to be concerned with a guy like Quinn Hughes that they just got. There's going to be more money against the books for him. Kaprizov, he's making a bunch of money. He just signed that big old deal. Does it really make sense for Minnesota to get a player that's turning 30 with that much cap hit to pay him this massive amount of money? And considering, sure, next season you got Quinn Hughes locked up, 7.85. There's obviously going to be increase there. While I think on paper would be a fantastic get, I'm just not too sure if Minnesota wants to mess with anything too crazy where they kind of put themselves up against the cap so they can't make other moves to increase their talent level to hopefully become a true Stanley Cup final. So overall, looking at the Minnesota Wild roster, I think there's some important re-signings and extensions they have to do. Like Quinn Hughes, they ended up just getting him from Vancouver. They have to extend him, right? He's on the last year of his deal. So he's a young defenseman. He's going to garner a lot of money. I'm imagining somewhere around the $12+ million range. And you need to have depth throughout the lineup. And there's just other pieces. And you need to allocate cap towards other areas. Is the Wild front office going to want to add an $8 million player? That's a pretty good cap hit to give to a guy, and they kind of lose their flexibility considering they have a lot of players that they're going to have to sign or go out and get to kind of fill out this roster. Vegas and Florida, I get. Hats off to Minnesota. They have become a destination because of the talent on the roster. $15.27 million in cap space, and that looks wonderful. It really does. But when you really look at the lineup, Bobrovsky's coming off the books, and they're most likely going to have to retain him unless he retires, because they're going to have a big old hole in the goaltending position, because Bobrovsky is while older goalie at this point, still highly effective. I don't really see them not retaining him or re-signing him in some form. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on that. I just think that would be a wild gamble. Tarasov, he was the backup. They need to sign 2 NHL level goaltenders. I could see them giving Bobrovsky a 1-year deal or maybe 2 years if he wants it. This Florida Panthers team this past season was ravaged by injuries. I don't think they're a bad team. I think they're just unlucky. They went on some deep runs the past few seasons, and a little bit of bad luck happened this year. I see the Panthers being right back in the thick of things in the Atlantic Division. Does Dylan Larkin necessarily put these guys over the top? I'm not really sure on that. And especially when you're seeing a guy like Lundell, who they have really heavily invested in developing and kind of, establishing him at the NHL level, giving him confidence. They gave him a deal, and considering it's only $5 million, it's cap control. 1 through 4 with the Florida Panthers. You got Barkov, you got Lundell, you got Bennett, Boquist if they end up bringing him back. They have good players here. Looking at the top 3 for the Florida Panthers, you got Barkov, you got Lundell, you got Bennett. Really, really, really good center depth. And Barkov, if he can return to even 85 to 90% of what he was before the injury, is an elite level player. Anton Lundell is like a mini Barkov, good two-way center, and I think the offensive upside is there. Maybe not as high as a guy like Dylan Larkin, but he's very good defensively in his two-way game. I don't really see a spot here for Larkin because I don't see the Panthers trading Lundell for Larkin. While maybe there's more offense for Larkin, I think the Florida Panthers really value what Lundell brings. So I think this is a good list for Larkin. Any player would want to play with any one of these teams because they're, when healthy, Stanley Cup contenders. That being said, I don't see Dylan Larkin going to 3 of those teams. Maybe I'm wrong. Vegas has done wonders. Florida has done wonders bringing in big players. Minnesota could go all in and see Larkin as that piece to finally get them over the hump. But if Larkin's going to want out of Detroit, he's going to have to expand that list. Now, I'm saying this as a Bruins fan pretty selfishly. When I look at a player like Dylan Larkin, I think he would be really needed here in a place like Boston. I think would properly fill out the top center role in Boston because truly they do lack that number 1C, and I think he could fit that role well. And the Boston Bruins have some guys in the pipeline that they could deal and an NHL player or two to make it somewhat alluring. To Detroit make that trade in division? I don't know. The return would have to be pretty damn good. But if I'm the Bruins, I would definitely be inquiring. And quite frankly, there's a lot of teams around the NHL that would like to bring in a guy like Dylan Larkin because the guy's effective. He is. He puts up points, and that can be hard to get at the NHL level. But unless Larkin expands that 3-team list, maybe we see a situation where it was like Matt Duchene with the Avalanche, where it's just a sit out and wait. And I don't think that's going to win him any more fanfare in Detroit. Considering he is the guy that's wearing the C, I'm assuming that will be stripped of him after demanding a trade. It's a shame because Dylan Larkin is a really good player. And now there's going to be a lot of love lost there in the Red Wing fan base, and I really don't blame them for that. But on the flip side, do I blame Dylan Larkin wanting out of Detroit? No, I do not. I think that Dylan Larkin has been there long enough. He is frustrated with the lack of success or even reaching the playoffs. He's a guy that is approaching his 30s, and he wants to go somewhere where he can win. And we have seen players in the past that have been on perennial losers go elsewhere and become successful and sometimes even win a Stanley Cup. Larkin is looking at it that this is the end of his prime here soon. He's probably got maybe 4 to 5 years left of that type of production, and he wants to make sure that he spends the rest of his prime years on a Stanley Cup contender, on a playoff team. I do not blame him. While I don't think he went about this in the best way, the competitor in him, I think anybody that's played sports could understand the competitor in him that does want to go to a situation where he can win, and it seems like Detroit isn't really there yet. They were in the first Atlantic for whatever reason, and he could also be a part of the problem there in Detroit as the captain for whatever reason. In some recent years, they've had some good, talented hockey teams, but they have fallen apart and missed the playoffs. I think a change for both parties would be good. I think the Red Wings, maybe a change in the leadership in that locker room would be good, and I think for Larkin going somewhere else where he isn't the head honcho, that top guy, could allow him to flourish. We have seen players that have been maligned in certain fan bases. I mean, look at Mitch Marner at his tenure towards the end with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and look at him go in these current Stanley Cup playoffs. He has become a playoff MVP. It could be best for both parties to really have a fresh start elsewhere. But let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Where do you believe would be the best team for Dylan Larkin to land? Where do you think it is the most reasonable place for him to land? And what exactly is going to be the return for Dylan Larkin for the Red Wings? I'd love to know your thoughts. Got the ball. See you in the next one.